If you ask a citizen of any country which entity they fear more, the chances are that most would reply a giant corporation rather than their own government. There are multiple reasons why this might be true. In the past decade, numerous reports have revealed how companies such as Facebook, Google, and Apple have been involved in data collection scandals, anti-competitive behavior, tax avoidance, content moderation issues, and violations of users' privacy. As a result, many citizens are now wary of these tech giants and concerned about their influence over our lives. It's natural to worry when these organizations hold so much power. But which one really has more power, a large company or a nation-state? To find out, let's compare their powers systematically. We'll look at the 10 aspects in which both of these entities have power, and we'll try to figure out which one has more of it. Before we start, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, it would help us a lot if you took a second to subscribe. Number 1. Legitimate force. Most people would agree that all the power in the world stems from the legitimate use of force. You only need to look at history to see how rulers who had the ability to inflict harm on others acquired wealth, fame, and devotion. For example, ancient Egyptian pharaohs were seen as gods by their subjects due to their military superiority, and nobody dared to oppose them. In modern times, nation-states are the main entities that have the exclusive right to use force within their borders. If they want to put down a riot or defend against an invading army, they can do so without asking for permission from anyone else. Corporations can hire security forces to protect their property and even own private armies in some cases, but nothing stops a nation-state from disarming them if it wants to. So, nation-states have more power here. Number 2. Legal authority. Similar to the previous point, nation-states are also the supreme authority when it comes to making laws. They don't necessarily make the best laws, but they are the only ones empowered to enforce them. Although there have been attempts to create a world law that would apply to everyone regardless of nationality, those haven't worked. Because the nations of the world don't agree on what form this law should take. Corporations can only operate within a nation-state's borders if they abide by its laws. So, nation-states win again. Number 3. Sovereignty. Every nation-state has the final say over what happens on its territory. If the state feels that a company isn't acting in its best interest, it can expel it from the country. Also, if a corporation wants to build something in a certain place, it needs the state's authorization to do so. In contrast, nation-states are not subject to any higher authority unless they voluntarily submit themselves to one. No state can tell another state what to do. So, again, we have to award this point to nation-states. 4. National infrastructure. Controlling the means of communication, transportation, and energy production gives huge advantages in terms of power. But nation-states are the only entities that can build and monitor these systems. They don't necessarily do a great job of managing them, as frequent blackouts, traffic jams, and bad air quality prove. But the fact that they have complete control over these infrastructures gives them more power than any corporation could ever hope to have. So, nation-states win this round, too. Number 5. Public opinion and legitimacy. Even though they may seem like faceless entities, nation-states depend on the support of their citizens to function. If the people lose faith in their leadership, they can bring down entire governments. For example, in the Arab Spring of 2011, several long-standing regimes were overthrown after people took to the streets to express their discontent. Corporations also depend on public support to operate. If consumers stop buying their products or using their services, they will quickly go bankrupt. However, in most cases, consumers' decision to buy a certain product is based on advertising or personal preferences and has a little effect on how a state operates. So, the edge goes to nation-states here. Number 6. Economic influence. When it comes to the economy, nation-states used to be the main players. But since then, multinational corporations have grown so large that they overshadow even the biggest economies in the world. Today, the top 200 companies control more wealth than the bottom 4.6 billion people of the world combined. and 10 corporations control 89% of the Fortune 500's total revenues. These numbers show that while states can manipulate the economy within their borders, large corporations can move money around the globe freely and have an enormous influence on which countries grow and which ones stagnate. So, this point goes to corporations. 7. Lobbying and political influence. Now, even though corporations are private entities, they aren't exactly independent from the government. In fact, they have very close ties with politicians who make decisions that benefit them. Usually, these benefits are subtle and not illegal, but they give large companies an advantage over small businesses and individuals. Nation-states, on the other hand, can make laws that apply to everyone equally. Of course, corruption does happen, but at least theoretically, a state's laws are supposed to be equal for everyone. Thus, this point also goes to corporations. 8. Global reach and market power. A large part of the power that corporations enjoy today comes from being able to produce goods at a low price while selling them for a high profit margin. That's how any business works, but corporations have taken it to the next level. For example, China became the world's factory by producing goods at extremely low prices, which helped it become the second largest economy in the world. If China suddenly stopped producing these goods, it would cause massive shortages worldwide and send prices skyrocketing. So, it seems that corporations win once again. 9. Technological innovation. Technology drives progress, and corporations are always competing to develop new things that will make life easier or more enjoyable for people. Most of the innovations that we enjoy today are the result of this competition, such as smartphones, social media, and the Internet. Nation-states can regulate how these technologies are used, but they don't usually have the resources to develop them. So, this point goes to corporations. Number 10. Brand power and public perception. We live in a consumerist society, and our consumption habits have a direct impact on our way of life. If a corporation manages to create a strong brand that people trust, they will always be able to sell something to someone. It doesn't matter if what they are selling is good for the environment or not. If people think that it's cool, then it will be bought. Likewise, if a corporation manages to create a negative perception of something, even if it's true, people will still avoid it. For example, when Volkswagen was found cheating on emissions tests, they were heavily fined and boycotted. In this case, people decided to punish the corporation by refusing to buy their cars. But the same thing also happened with the French satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo, which was targeted by terrorists for publishing cartoons of Prophet Muhammad. After the attack, millions of people marched in support of the paper, and people from all over the world bought the newspaper just to stand in solidarity with it. So, in this case, we can see that corporations have more power than nation-states. And the winner is. As you can see, it doesn't matter if we're talking about legitimate force, economic influence, technological innovation, or even brand power. Nation-states have more power than corporations in almost every aspect, and the reason for this is quite simple. A nation-state is a unified body that controls a territory and can use force to enforce its will. On the other hand, a corporation is made up of shareholders, board members, and employees whose interests may not always be aligned. And even if they are, they still have to deal with multiple states that have different rules and regulations. This makes it difficult for corporations to accumulate as much power as nation-states. However, this doesn't mean that corporations aren't powerful. They are just different from the power that nation-states wield. Corporations can easily take advantage of loopholes in the system and use their wealth to influence politicians or whole economies. Nation-states, on the other hand, are forced to play by the rules and are held accountable to their citizens. If they abuse their power, they risk being overthrown. Corporations don't have to worry about that. So the question of which one has more power isn't as simple as it seems, and the answer will change depending on how power is defined. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like our video comparing the US and China's superpowers.